Right, so welcome to Challenging Leadership. My name's Stephen.
Hi there, Stephen. I'm Jared.
Hey, good to see you. So the topic today is one that you've chosen. So would you like to introduce it, please?
Absolutely. The topic that we're going to talk about today is the idea of working from home and remote work, and we're gonna talk about the opinions for and against, and see where we come out on the end with this.
Yeah, it's interesting. So about a week ago, I think we had a quick email conversation, and you suggested this. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. And it was only this morning because I knew there was some research about this that I'd looked at, and this morning it occurred to me that I've actually developed a course about this, and I've
Look
forgotten
at
about
that! Hey,
it. I
well,
developed a
hey,
course.
perfect opportunity to pitch it.
I'm gonna flog it right now. So it's on Udemy. It's about half an hour. I'll put a link to it, so you can check that out if you're interested. It's a Udemy course, so it's all online. But yeah, and I actually developed it during COVID. So in 2020, when we were in the middle of lockdown, I think you were as well in the States.
Hmm.
I did this course because I thought it was obviously quite relevant and it was a good time to do something. So I recorded it at home, not in the normal studio. So the sound's a bit echoey, but I think I listen to it. You know how sometimes you look back at your own work and you
Yeah.
go, this
Hmm.
guy knows what he's talking about,
There you go.
So I thought, yeah, actually, that's quite a good little course. So I've listened to myself this morning, and
Hmm.
I'll be drawing upon some of the research I did for that. But where do you want to start with it, Jared?
Well, you know what? I think I want to just start with where it kind of got its kicking off point. You just
Mm,
mentioned COVID.
yeah.
I can remember March of 2020, my manager at that time came in and said, "Hey, take your stuff. You're going home for a few weeks." And a few weeks
Mm.
turned into a year and 7 or 8 months
Yes.
of working from home every day.
Mm.
And what I found interesting, because of the fact that it was a mandate, this was pushed down, especially from government authorities.
Mm.
You didn't really have time to challenge whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. We kind of just had to adapt, and it evolved. And then when we all came back to work, it was like, I kind of like that a little bit, and so did a lot of other people. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that could be echoed throughout many corporations around the world.
Mm.
And so now we're sitting back with big companies going, nope, we want you to come back all the
Mm.
time. And so my thought is why is that? And are there actually any real benefits to working from home?
Yeah.
What are the benefits to being in the office? So I think there's a lot of points that you can pick your I don't want to say your poison, but pick your point of view,
Mm.
and you can probably support that with facts and figures either way.
Mm.
But what I thought we do is start with what are some of the points for working from home.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to go first then?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
I'll,
I'll,
I'll
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 drop
follow
in
up with
there.
my thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll tell you one of the things that, and this is my personal point of view first, and then
Mm.
we'll get into some facts. Is I found it enjoyable because, especially in my role, I found myself to be interrupted constantly.
Yeah.
When you have an office and people can just step in, hey, how's it going? And you make small talk, but when you're really trying to pound out a presentation or work on
Mm.
some things that you need to do, interruptions can be disastrous, because you probably know this as a content creator. You kind of want to be in your zone and minimize interruptions. So when you work from home, you have a little bit more control over the interruptions.
Yeah.
You get that Jabber, that Teams, or that Zoom ring. You can say, "Yep, not right now,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can't really do that not right now when somebody's knocking at your door. I mean, I guess you could, um, but it's kind of interesting how it's got it started. Like, I enjoy this.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Actually, speaking of that, I should just say that I'm expecting a delivery today, so we may well have an interruption. That is one of the
There you go.
downsides that we'll come to. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I agree. I think generally speaking, you do get fewer interruptions. You might you do tend to be, and I've become the person around the estate that collects all my neighbours' parcels for them, because I'm
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
who's in. Although our neighbour now they're working from home as well. So
Hmm.
yes, I agree. I think that's one definitely one of the benefits. In fact, when I was doing my course, and it was actually part of my master's, we did a whole module around this. There's actually some research that was done. I'll put a link to the paper on the show notes for anybody who wants to sort of read the paper. But it was a paper by Bloom and Bloom et al. And the question was, does working from home work? And they actually did a sort of experiment with a company. And this company was an estate agent, not an estate agent, what I'm talking about, a travel agency.
Mhm.
And they split their workforce into two groups. One that they got them to work from home all the time for a few months, and the other one they just carried on doing what they were normally doing. And they compared the performance of the two groups. And they found that the group that worked from home permanently were 13.5% more productive. However, they measured that. If you read the paper, you'll see
Mhm.
more detail,
Yeah.
but they measured that, and they found they were 13.5% more productive. And actually, if you think about that, that's a heck of a lot.
Yeah,
That's
it
a big
is.
improvement. I work in improvement projects, and if you do an improvement project that costs nothing pretty much, but delivers 13.5% improvement, that's a good result. That's a good return. And
Absolutely.
the reason for that was partly fewer interruptions. We've all worked in open plan offices where you constantly, even if you're not getting interrupted, you can't help but get distracted by phone calls and conversations and all of that. So that was one of the benefits. Another one was the commute to work. Obviously, not having to commute to work can take an hour or 2 hours
Mhm.
out of your day, and that meant that they actually chose to be at their desk earlier. So they
Yes.
ended up working a bit longer, which has its downsides possibly as well. But
Mhm.
they thought, well, I might as well. I'll be on the train otherwise, or driving to work, so I might as well get an early start. So then make a cup of coffee and just get cracking.
Yeah.
So it actually improved productivity simply by the fact that they were doing more. So there's a couple of reasons there that I think are
Mhm.
quite interesting.
Yeah. It's I hope this is a valid source, but I found a article in the Times in the UK,
Oh yeah,
and yep, and it brought
nice.
out an interesting point. It said that workers were willing to take a 10% cut in their
Mm,
pay
yeah,
if they could work from home, and I found that fascinating because I'm like, money is an important part of our career choice,
yeah.
but it showed me that it's not everything,
Mm,
and that people having that freedom. I think about it, it's like, hey, if you need to go walk your dog
yeah,
or go throw some clothes in your machine to wash them,
yeah.
things like that, get dinner started. All these little small nuances that honestly add up to maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes worth of time
Mm.
is is giving you a huge jump start, I guess, on stuff you have to do when you get home from work, say 5:30, 6 o'clock or longer
Yeah,
with the commute.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that was, one of the things that was cited in the paper. Again, it's people appreciated it, and yeah, there's been other research around, surveys around that, and yeah, I mean, it can be a genuine um, benefit in kind, really, because obviously you have to pay for your fuel to get to work,
Hmm.
or train tickets or whatever. So you've got a cost there that you can get rid of. There might be a little bit of childcare. We can talk about childcare perhaps a bit
Hmm.
later, because that's a complicated factor, and it can
Yes.
be good and negative. But a little bit of, I think during COVID, where there was perhaps two parents both working from home, perhaps not too many children, not that many children. It
Hmm.
was that they could manage that, and so they perhaps saved on childcare a little bit as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's another potential benefit, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, trying not to get over into the negative side of it, but one of the things that with working from home brought about was I think people were able to produce, I would say projects got done quicker. That's just something I observed because,
Yeah,
again, the interruptions were minimized. And so say you're working on content. And again, I'm looking at it strictly from, I'm in the, I guess, learning and development industry, being
Mm.
a training manager. And I know you do very similar things.
Yeah.
So that's where you do need absolute focus.
Yeah.
So there's benefits to that, or being available to help people out. And I think when you're in the zone, you're able to just keep in the zone. Whereas there's kind of this proverbial invisible whistle that blows at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and if you got the creative juices flowing, you can just keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's benefit there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's general quality of life potential benefits. There are some
Hmm.
downsides to that again, we'll come to once we've exhausted
Sure.
all the benefits. There's less traveling around. So I personally am concerned about things like usage of carbon fuel. So the carbon
Hmm.
footprint reduces. So that's nice. I don't need to worry about that so much. Save on wear and tear on my car.
Sure.
I used to travel just about 30 minutes to work every day. 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back. So that's quite close. That's a short commute, but still, it's an hour every day that. And if you got
Hmm.
traffic, I live in quite a rural area, so you'd often get stuck behind tractors as well.
Yeah.
Um, and there's big ditches on either side of the road, so you also ran the risk of coming off the road. So yeah,
Not
all in
stuck behind
all,
Jeremy Clarkson, are you, on a
no, we're
tractor?
keeping
No.
well away from that man. Um, yeah, he's not as popular in this country as he is in yours. I don't think. That probably goes for quite a few people.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I think I think there's a lot of good things about it, and I personally love working from home. It really
Yes.
suits my lifestyle. It suits me. I can sometimes I'll get up early if I've woken up early, especially in the summer when the mornings are light. I'll get up and I'll come into this room here, which I call the leadership loft, and
Hmm.
I'll start work at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever, and I'll work
Hmm.
till 3. And then if I feel like getting on my bike, I'll just do that. And
Yep.
because I'm also my own boss, that's easy because I can make those
Hmm.
decisions myself. But it's
Yes.
it's great. My daughter has worked from home now for quite a few years. Really, she started a new job during COVID, again working from home, and then she changed jobs, and again that's working from home. So she's a project manager, and yeah, she was inducted into her job at home. Everything happened at home, and again, it suits her and a partner. They both do quite a bit from home. So yeah, there's lots. I think there are lots of things that are good about it. Let's say.
Yeah. Lots of things that are good, and that's why I've got the question to ask, because I have very rarely heard someone say, "Absolutely hate it.
Yeah,
I wish I could come back to the office." So
yeah.
why is there this move towards return to work?
Why do you think it is?
That's
Because
what's
I've got my own suspicions, and I'm quite a cynical
yeah.
man. Age
I think
and trouble has done that to me.
yeah.
But what do you think?
I got to be careful here because I'm very passionate about this.
Okay.
No, but no, I was thinking, I was like, we got a bunch of old curmudgeon fuddy duddies. I'm sounding
Yeah.
so ageist right now. I feel terrible, but
Yeah.
honestly, I think that people don't like change, and that's another. Remember, people love change. People don't like change, but
Remember
from a
we talked
leadership,
about this.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. We're not going to go down that side street with that, but managers in particular, the style of leaders that are out there, you have some leaders that are results oriented, and so that's their focus. Are we getting the project? Are we satisfying the customer's needs? And you got others where it's like there's these metrics they want to be able to measure, and they find it impossible based on how they like to measure these KPIs or whatever you like to call them. If they can't see them, they're looking. They're like, I can't tell if there's a green circle on their teams or whatever. I guess they're active, and they're basing that on it. And I think they also have a hard time translating. There's tremendous waste of time in the
Mhm.
workplace that they
Yeah.
don't capture. There's almost like, well, it's naughty of you to wash your clothes at home, but you can stand around the water cooler and talk about what you did on the weekend for 20
Yeah.
minutes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Absolutely.
it's it's a point of view struggle that we have with that. And there probably are some cases where people have seen what I would say is people are not as efficient. I think there are some people that need some type of guidance and direction in real time
Yeah.
in order to be productive. They're not bad workers;
Mm.
they just struggle with not having that oversight. So, but they're pointing those few out and using
Mm.
that as the example
Yeah.
versus the 90% that are thriving in the work from home environment.
Yeah, so I think there's things that we can do as managers and leaders to mitigate the risks which we're highlighting
Mhm.
now. So I totally agree with you. I've even got a blooming acronym for us, Jared. You'll be
Yes.
pleased to
What you
know.
got? Let's do
I'll
it.
introduce that in a moment. But no, I think just because I think it requires a different skill set, or at least changes to our skill set as leaders and managers to get this right. So it means it involves us perhaps changing our approach. We have a change in government over the last 6 months, but the government before was a very conservative government. I mean, it was that our political party it was called the Conservatives. They
Mhm.
are called Conservatives, and they had a particular minister called Jacob Rees-Mogg. You probably haven't heard of him over there in the States.
No.
He's not a particularly prominent minister, although we all know him over here, and he's sort of laughingly known as the minister for the 17th century, because he talks like that, He's very posh sort of talking, and you think I'm exaggerating, but I'm absolutely not. So he look him up on YouTube or something, and you'll
Okay.
find Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Gotcha.
And he was one of the ones who in the government were very keen to get back to people coming to work, and he would try and get civil servants to come back into the office.
Mhm.
And yeah, he just, and again, I think that's again because of his old fashioned views around what he considered to be normal. But I think we have to remember that, and I talk about this in my course, that normal when it comes to the workplace is just something we've constructed over time anyway. What's normal about going into a big building, sitting at a desk, typing stuff into a computer for 8 hours, and then driving home again for 5 days a week? That's not
Yeah.
really normal. Most of humanity, the hundreds of thousands of years we've been on the planet, we haven't been doing that. So
Mhm.
work itself, the way we do work, it's not any more normal or less normal than anything else. It's just
That's
that
right.
we've grown accustomed to the way that we do it. So we
Mhm.
shouldn't, I don't think we should be afraid of making changes. So yes, I
Mhm.
agree. That's one of the problems, is that some of the people that are in charge just really struggle to come to terms with a change. What else
Yeah.
do you think?
Well, this not to be funny, but that Times article actually said that the amount of pints consumed went down with work from home,
Went
and they
down.
said that it's terrible.
Yes.
They said
Right.
it went from 4.7 pints down to
Mm,
3.9 pints, and I think
yeah.
that's a tragedy. But the real story
Mm,
behind that is that they said that actually working from home, it gave people satisfaction. However, they said that mental illness crept up. People struggled with loneliness and isolation.
mm,
And I thought about, some of us aren't social creatures. Like, put me in a room and let me pound away on my keyboard and I'm
yeah.
happy. But I'm like, that's not everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they were talking about how there's that community that people want.
Yeah.
They want to be part of a tribe, as it were. And as much as we want to keep work and home separate, it's kind of an impossibility in a lot of cases. And the people you work with are the people that you spend a tremendous amount of time with, and then all of a sudden you get it ripped away. And I don't
Yeah.
know, looking at each other face to face just isn't the same.
Mm,
And it actually it used the example. They did a study about players who play chess did significantly worse playing online versus in person.
is that
And I
interesting?
was like, it's the
Mm,
exact same game.
yeah.
The environment was just different as
Yeah.
far as that. And I was like, So they were just saying that there are some cases where people don't thrive as well
Yeah.
because of the fact they don't have that in person,
Yeah.
whatever it is, that chat over coffee at the coffee machine or whatever.
that is definitely one of the risks, and it's one of those that I talk about in my course too. I think we have to be a bit careful with our. I guess maybe the study adjusted for this, but over COVID there were, and since COVID there has been an increase in reported mental health problems, but it's hard to know what the causation of that is. So
Sure.
correlation does
Hmm.
not always mean causation. Yes, people
Hmm.
work from home more, but there was also a pandemic,
Yeah.
and
There was
so
other factors.
there were some other factors that could also contribute to
Yeah.
mental illness.
Yeah.
And we have, we've had since COVID, really, we've had quite a lot of upheavals in various sort of forms. So, yeah, it. I think, but I think it's right to say that if you happen to be quite an extrovert person, you're very social, then yeah, it can be quite difficult. I know Celine, my daughter, found that when she did start her new job, she found that particularly hard because, just the first few weeks, you normally get to know people and so on, and she
Mhm.
didn't really have any of that, and that was, I think, that was quite difficult. So, yeah, that's something we need to consider if we're going to
Mhm.
do it. I think, yeah, yeah. So that's definitely true.
Absolutely.
And as for yeah, pints, it wasn't just pints; it was also coffees and
Yeah.
sandwiches. So sandwich shops, coffee shops. So lunch time, you'd normally nip out and
Mhm.
get a sandwich or something and a coffee, and so those
Yeah.
businesses really suffered. So that's true that economy, that part of the economy, really struggled. I guess other parts of other things, compensated. So deliveries to home perhaps increased. I don't know the data for that, but people would
Mhm.
be ordering things in, I suppose. But yeah, I agree that is a downside, and it also can atomize society, which is
Mhm.
potentially bad anyway. And we're kind of going that way, where you can pretty much spend all of your time on your own. I mean, I've always joked about it. The pandemic was a terrifying, awful time, lots of problems, but in some respects, I kind of enjoyed it because I loved being at home with my
You could be a
family.
professional hermit.
Exactly, and I ordered food in. So for me, it was. I I guess it's funny. I was talking to some learners the other day, saying how important they are. They work in the factory, and I was saying during COVID, food manufacturing, during COVID, I got to stay at home, whereas you guys, you had to come to work, because you're more important
Yeah,
than me, and I
that's
think
right.
we've forgotten that.
Mhm.
I think very quickly we used to
Yeah.
clap for the carers every week. We had a day a week where everybody would stand outside their houses and clap for doctors, nurses, people working in the
Mhm.
NHS, the health service. Um, and yet, when it comes to giving them more money in their pay packet now, it's we can't afford it. I'm afraid.
That's right.
So yeah, we forget these things. Probably gone off
Yeah.
piece a bit there, but
That's all right, but that's an interesting thing that you bring up because of the fact that one of the negative side effects of it is that you have I'll call it that's not fair.
yeah,
You know what happens in a company because it's impossible to have the entire company work from home in
yeah,
most cases.
that's right.
Maybe there's a few companies out there, but you've got your production workers, you have your essential workers that need to be there, and I know I experienced that. It's just like but there's just certain things you can't do. I mean, a doctor can't perform open heart surgery in his
That's right.
home.
Yeah,
Um, and the business I was in at that time was very much so an essentially mandated business by the government because it dealt with transportation and other avenues. So it's like
mm,
workers had to be there. They actually had printouts they could carry with them in case they got stopped. Why are you,
right.
working?
Mm,
And it was like, so it was serious. But then that carried on. It's like after we're past that, now it's like, oh wait, they're still working from home, and I've got to come in
mm,
so that's a tough thing because ultimately it's very dangerous when you just start thinking about one section of your business model.
mm.
You have to think about the unity and the well-being of the entire organization. So I think that's one of the negative things that it's very hard to balance. How do
Yeah,
you do that? Because
yeah.
because ultimately, yeah, you may be a leader, but there's usually a leader over you that's trying to juggle all of the different
Yeah.
situations. So that can be a difficult thing.
Yeah, I think I guess we're going to come on to ways forward, but I suppose
Hmm.
the obvious answer to some of this stuff is a hybrid model, which is
Yeah.
where I think most companies have gone. Not all, but most companies have gone to a state where you come into the office perhaps two days a week, maybe 3 days a week, but you have much more ability to do work from home, and that seems to be actually where most people,
Hmm.
a lot of people prefer that
Yeah.
themselves. So maybe that's a simple answer, but probably quite a good one. And that way, yeah, of course, it is a potential boost for workers that can work from home versus those that can't. There are a whole range though of inequalities, and I think as a workplace, we need to work hard to perhaps compensate one way or another for
Hmm.
for those people that can't work from home. What can we do
Sure.
to help them to get some benefit from what they're doing? So, yeah,
Yeah.
there are things we can do, I think.
Absolutely. You kind of cracked the seal on the hybrid style, and I found
Yeah,
that to be extremely successful in our
yeah,
area.
yeah,
And one of the things that's been a benefit about it is that you kind of get the best of both worlds.
yeah,
You get your time to really work on things without distractions, but also you get that community if needed. There's some times where it's like you just have to do it in person, especially in our arena. We're teaching in person classes,
yes,
so you're not going to put a TV out in front of the students. Virtual training and e-learnings are great in their own right, but
yep.
you can't be in-person instruction.
It has its place.
So
It's something
yeah.
I mentioned on my course, which I'd forgotten about, and I was quite I was glad I looked at it again because it reminded me. But there's a whole because I have a little section on meetings. I mean, obviously the same would apply to
Mhm.
training courses, but even a meeting, you think about the geography within the room of a meeting. You've got normally
Mhm.
you're sat around a desk or a table, or maybe you dump the table, or maybe you're stood around a board or something. There's a very specific way of being in that type of meeting or training course. Online, it's very different. You're all sat there on a two-dimensional grid, basically looking at each other
Mhm.
in the face,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is really
Yeah.
unusual. That doesn't happen in
Yeah.
most meetings, and that
Right.
changes the nature of that discussion, that meeting, actually quite considerably. So we had to learn all these things. I mean, one of the things that I found was I couldn't stop looking at myself. It's like you
Mhm.
because you got a picture of yourself there,
That's right.
and you're sort of drawn to how am I projecting myself at this point? And you're
Mhm.
sort of not noticing
Mhm.
body language so much, and so on. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's another potential problem. Do you want to hear my
Absolutely.
acronym?
I kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, "When's he get to it?" I'm
You're all
excited.
ears. Okay, let's go for it. So I've got this little acronym, and I say if you're going to be a manager or a leader with your team working from home, then you need to be a leader who cares. So CARES is the acronym. And so the C stands for communicate more. So if you're going to
Mhm.
have people working from home, then you need to make more effort to make sure you're communicating, because obviously it's not going to happen by accident. So all managers need to be careful that they communicate, but when you have remote teams, then it's even more important to make the effort. So communicate more, and that includes perhaps scheduling some times to have those water cooler conversations.
Mhm.
Maybe schedule 5 minutes before the meeting or after the meeting, or just have a catch up for 20 minutes with each team member, just to give opportunity to ask, how's your family, how was your weekend, those sorts of things that are
Mhm.
part of our social interactions. um, so the C stands for communicate more. The A stands for agree new norms. So we're going to have to get used to new ways of doing things that become norms, and that's the E in this this acronym is expectation setting, and in a way, these two are very similar. So, agreeing new norms. What do we expect from each other? What are these new
Mhm.
norms? Um, is it that you start at 8 o'clock in the morning, or is the new norm that you can start anytime you want, so long as you do the required amount of hours over the day or week,
Mhm.
or so the new norm is that we're flexible. You can take your lunch when you want, you can have a break when you want, you can go and play with the kids for an hour, whatever. That's that you have to agree that, though, so you have that conversation with your team members.
Mhm.
The R stands for routine and structure. So you need, I think, and they need a routine and structure. So yeah, there's a balance
Mhm.
between saying, yeah, you can be flexible, but total flexibility is kind of chaos and it's hard to
Yeah.
track how you're doing. So I would recommend some sort of routine and structure, even with um, some plenty of room for flexibility and switching
Mhm.
things around. Expectation setting I've mentioned. So what can you expect from me as your manager when we're working remote? Can you expect me to call you? Excuse me. um, can you expect me to be checking on your work as you're doing it? Lots of technology now allows managers to monitor activity. I'm not a massive fan of that, but what are the expectations?
Mhm.
And the S stands for support. So obviously, think about how you're going to support the person working from home. So that's my little acronym, and in my course, I sort of
Love
go
it.
through that in a bit more detail. One thing I meant to say about the both upside and downside, I forgot to mention it, was the child minding responsibilities, or having
Mhm.
your own children, looking after your own children.
Yeah.
During COVID, obviously, we were expected to have the children with us. I mean, my daughter was growing up, so I didn't have the problem. But um, what are the ups and downs for that, do you think, around looking after your kids?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I've heard, because I don't have children, but I have people that work with me, and they said, "Oh, it was great to have the kids around, but then the downside is I've got the kids around."
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so there's that, and then balancing that with healthcare is expensive in the U.S., and then childcare right next to it is tremendously expensive. In fact, most couples just say, you know what, it's not even worth it for both of them to work because it's about $10-15 difference a week is what
yeah.
it
Oh,
can
wow,
be. So
wow.
saving the money, but having the children around can be great. But I think it depends on the age group that you're dealing with.
Yeah,
You know, you got the
yeah.
teenagers that want to be left alone and stay in their room.
That's easy.
That's one thing. But
Yeah.
when you have the needs of
Mm,
a child,
yeah,
you can't just ignore those.
mm,
But at the same time, it's like you got to do your job. So I think
yeah.
that's got to be a terrible struggle
I think
to
so.
balance between those two.
Yeah, I mean, if there's two of you there, then there's a bit of tag team playing, I think, but still, obviously, you're both
Hmm.
expected to work. So, yeah, I think it was one of the hardest bits for parents who had young children at home, to manage all of that, and they were still expected to
Hmm.
do their normal
Yeah.
thing. I think we have become much more relaxed, though,
Hmm.
with work. So I had a meeting the other day with a guy, and his son just came up to him in the middle of the conversation and just wanted to ask him something, and that I
Yeah.
was absolutely fine about that. Why would I complain
Sure.
about that? That's absolutely
That's
cool.
right.
And I think we're much cooler about that sort of thing. The odd interruption, that's just what it is like working from home. So
Hmm.
um, I think that's reasonable as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've become better. I really hope we don't go all the way backwards. I think there's some
Yeah.
room for hybrid working. Yeah, let's get in the office maybe a bit more for some of those who completely disappeared. But I really hope we don't go back to having to go into work every day for 10 hours a day,
Yeah.
and
That's right. Yeah. I was thinking, the newer generations, they just, when I say they don't care, they care, but they care about, I would say, the right things.
yeah,
So you say, hey, you're just going to come back to work. Like, okay, well, I'm gone. I'm going to work somewhere else. Whereas,
yeah,
my generation may be older, like, oh, well, I guess I'll just, pull my bootstraps up and
Yeah.
take it on the chin and keep going. And I'm like, the newer work generations are just not going to put up with that. So there's going to be pushback. And I think my concluding thought would be, if you don't want people to work from home, why? We have to answer the why. Is it your personal viewpoints? Is it you feel uncomfortable with it? Are you struggling with, you brought up that great care or cares
Yeah.
example. I love that. But I'm like, do they feel like they have a hard time doing those things outside of being in person?
Yeah.
So maybe there's a struggle with technology, but whatever it is, I just say, why is it?
Yeah.
Because generally it's not going to be because of inefficiencies. I
Yeah.
mean, research has shown that it's a great way to get a lot of things accomplished in
Yeah.
most cases. So
Yeah, yeah, and as you said earlier, that there will always be edge cases where somebody's very lazy and just playing a
mhm.
game. Well, they're likely to be like that in the office as well, aren't they? So
That's right.
I think
Absolutely.
the evidence is that you get a decent person and
Yeah.
they'll work just as hard. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're of a very similar mind on this. It'd be interesting to see what happens in our respective countries on this topic. I think we're probably
hmm
in similar places.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's keep our eyes out. In the meantime, if you are a manager who has a team that works from home or people, then check out my course and you might find it useful.
Absolutely.
Very
Good chat.
good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Jared. I enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah.
I have got a bit of a cold today, so I might sound even more nasally than normal. But thanks for putting up with that, and thank you for listening, everyone. Don't forget to like if you're on YouTube, or subscribe if you're on a podcast app, or follow if you're on Apple Podcasts. Whatever you need to do, and also tell somebody else about it. We actually doubled our listenership last week,
Yes, we
so
did.
people did what we asked them to do. What about that?
Let's double it again.
Let's double it again. We might call that incremental growth. How good would that be? So
Yes.
yeah, tell
Yeah.
somebody about the podcast, and also let us know what topics you're interested in. We can keep on picking topics, but it's always nice when we get a bit of feedback. So please do
Absolutely.
that. Great. Thank you very much. See you next
Yep.
time. Bye for
We'll
now.
see you. Bye.
Bye.